Thing about Noah and the Ark, though, if you go back to that story is very similar to a story that's in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And most
Yes.
likely what that story is about, the Great Flood seems to very much be real. Very much be real. And there's a lot of physical evidence, and there's a gentleman named Randall Carlson who's been on my podcast. Have you ever seen any of those episodes?
No,
He's been on my podcast many times. He's an expert in asteroid collisions. And this time in history where after this time, there's all these stories of floods. It aligns directly with this thing called the Younger Dryas and the Younger Dryas impact theory. The Younger Dryas is a time period around 11,800 years ago where they think the Earth got hit by comets. And they think civilization got basically wiped out. And it makes sense. Because first of all, it makes sense physically. So sorry if people have heard this before. I beat this fucking horse to death. But there's a lot of evidence when they do core samples on the Earth. At that time period, there's a high level of iridium, which is very rare on Earth, but very common in space. And there's also nanodiamonds, which occur when there's an impact, when something hits. And this is all over the world.
But yes, I believe that the Earth has been hit by comets. We in a space. How can you not?
There's evidence.
It's evidence.
There's tons of evidence. There's tons of evidence. They found was it Greenland or Iceland, that massive impact that they found? The Earth's been hit so many times, man. It wasn't just the Yucatan one that killed the dinosaurs. It's been many, 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 many times it's been hit. And in fact, this comet shower that we go through every year, 31-kilometer, 19-mile wide meteorite crater discovered under a kilometer of Greenland ice had long puzzled scientists. The Hiawatha crater was exceptionally well preserved despite glacier ice being incredibly effective at erosion. That's interesting. Graham Hancock, who's also been on the podcast many times, is a good friend of mine. He has a documentary called Ancient Catastrophe. Is that it? It's not Apocalypse, right? Ancient Apocalypse. I always fuck those up. Ancient Apocalypse, that's on Netflix. It's amazing. And it's all talking about like these insane structures that people built in Africa, in Asia, all over the world, in Turkey. These insane structures that predate modern civilization. These are like 5,000 years before we think Mesopotamia emerged. Huge stone columns, huge structures that they know for sure were 11,000 years old.
Yeah.
The show's amazing. It's an amazing show.
I think I watched this.
It's really good. And it's, he only touches the surface because there's so many of these all over the world. And Egypt is the best example.
The best example of
Egypt is a fantastic example because there's stuff that's under the sand that's even older than the massive stuff that's above the sand. And the stuff under the sand that they find when they dig deeper, it's a totally different style of building.
This is what the X-Clan used to rap about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Poor Righteous Teachers, that whole brand Nubian. This is the pyramids and building of the stones and Egypt, the whole Egyptian culture, Timbuktu, the whole thing. So
yeah,
been around for a long time.
That's the wild shit. The wild shit is that if it wasn't for those stones, if everybody lived like we live today in glass houses and shit, there'd be nothing left. There'd be nothing. What would you find like a regular house made out of wood and glass? What the fuck is going to be there in 10,000 years? Zero. There'd be nothing left. You'd find nails. Oh, look, I found a nail. What would you find? You'd find a few things. But most of it would be consumed by the earth.
Yeah.
Graham Hancock has this amazing quote. He said that human beings are a species with amnesia.
Oh, yes, for sure.
For sure.
Oh, for sure.
And I think the way we've gone today technologically with like phones and microphones and video cameras and shit, like we've gone into an electronic technology. Yeah. I think they went into another technology that was different, a different path, but way more powerful. They were able to move stones out of the mountains and move them 500 miles. They don't have any fucking idea how they did it.
The necessity, figuring out things from necessity.
That, but I think thousands of years of thinking. I think, when we think about the Industrial Revolution and we think about the way the world was just 2,000 years ago to now, I think those people were recovering. I think those people 2,000 years ago were recovering from shit that happened thousands of years before that, where people were just knocked back into barbarism, just survival of the fittest, just wild shit, because there was nothing left. We live in a Mad Max apocalypse, even worse. nuclear winter. When those things hit into the ground, the massive floods come, it also kicks up dust into the atmosphere. Nothing grows. People are probably cannibalizing each other. It was probably horrific.
Oh, for sure. You ever read the book The Ice Age and Inheritance?
No.
This is what it talks about people, how they went into the Ice Age, and then they had to start cannibalizing each other because there was nothing growing and all of these other things. Like, wow.